Hey guys, this is Mikro. I'm back with a Ice Gauntlet guide. I did a one for the blunderbuss a little while ago, and that turned out pretty well. I think it's Ice Gauntlet. I'm not gonna put together like a formal spreadsheet of builds, just because Ice Gauntlet's always a secondary and there's always other options. But there are a few like main builds that people will choose to run with the Ice Gauntlet. So I figured I would go over those real quick. Usually if you're running Ice Gauntlet, the main thing that you're looking at is you're running Blunderbuss, either well in any spec, Blunderbuss and Ice Gauntlet is generally a default, Void Gauntlet, Ice Gauntlet is generally a default, Life Staff, Ice Gauntlet's a consideration now, Fire Staff, Ice Gauntlet is the default, and then everything else is kind of a weird thing to run. But int-based weapons and the life staff in particular are kind of interesting for the Ice Gauntlet. Ice Gauntlet, the util from it is not the damage at this point. The util from the Ice Gauntlet is the ult charge, as well as just the util from shower mostly. Everything else in this kit is like decent. Like Ice Storm isn't bad as an ability, but it's not that impactful. It's just kind of all about the Ice Shower and the Entomb. People run Ice Storm and Ice Pylon kind of interchangeably. The only build where people run Ice Spike is like the Fire Staff build, which I'll show that tree in a second, but this is the normal tree that everyone will run for any build. The blocking stamina is a consideration in some metas, but right now it's not very impactful. There's like a few spots where it's nichely good, like if you have a light great axe swinging on you, this can be good, because it'll actually gen you stamina and it'll force him to use something else, but in a circumstance where it's not a 1v1, it's not super reliable. And usually if you're in a spot where you wanna use dodges because of the Warhammer stuns on point, it's not like very, very good in most situations, and if you're off a point, then a great source is gonna heavy attack you anyway, so it's useless to use this. So this is like a standard tree. The reason why you don't go ultimate chill anymore is because ultimate chill has been fixed, I guess. It got heavily nerfed to the point where it doesn't make sense to run it for any build except for Ice Spike. Basically, if you swap off your Ice Gauntlet at all, the ultimate chill effect won't work, and it won't work on allies, it won't work on gems, it only works on like Ice Gauntlet abilities. So this is like never worth going for, but this allows you to get all of the perks on Entomb and on Ice Shower now, which is kind of a nice benefit. I ran this before a little bit without the Ultimate Chill and it felt really good. It was just like less util for the army because Ultimate Chill is so good back in the day. But this is like your kind of standard tree. Like this perk is kind of interchangeable, but there's like almost no circumstance where this really matters except if you're going Ice Spike. You're not really caring about crits at all with this build. If I'm going to Ice Spike tree, I usually do something like this. You get most of the perks on the left side, and then it's like something like that is like what I normally would do. You can drop some of these perks, like if you wanted to go for like the Rune Glass Dot. I haven't run the Ice Spike build in a very, very long time, but I know it's not bad as Fire Staff, but every other build in the game it doesn't really make sense. Ice Gauntlet, Void Gauntlet, it's like greedy, like you can kind of run this, and if you were to run this in like an IGVG setup at this point, like I guess you run it like something like this, but it just feels really awkward because you really want these extra like cleanses now that the cleanse pot nerf is affecting the war, so it doesn't really make a ton of sense. So I'll go back to the standard tree real quick and then show you guys like some basic things with this tree. And then I'll move on to Pylon, which is like the other build that people sometimes run with Ice Gauntlet. So your standard thing with Ice Gauntlet, it's like kind of all about your spacing, and a lot of the skill with Ice Gauntlet comes down to how you shower. Usually, if you do a shower, you want to stand in it, and then you want to use an ability, and it will proc Refreshing Frost. Refreshing Frost is 20% CDR. So there's ways to basically go infinite between Shower, Storm, and Tomb by yourself, I believe, if you have 8 Refreshing, not including Deadly Frost. So usually the common thing to do with an Ice Gauntlet build if you're playing for the Ice Gauntlet, and usually with this you're playing for the Void Gauntlet, is you go 8 or 9 Refreshing, which also makes it a pretty decent option for healers, because then healers can also shower gates continuously. So it's a pretty good build for OPR for keeping people out of outposts, and it's a good build for in wars for keeping people out of fort. It's less good on attack, but it's still really good because the ice shower zoning is very, very solid, and it lasts a long second, like a long amount of time. That's a 7-second like spot where they can't attack you, basically, where you can get help and you can wait for your other stuff. The reason why I usually do shower first and then you do storm is because when you do a shower, you kind of end up on the edge of it usually, so then it's like very easy to storm. Versus if you do storm first, then you have to like run into it and then you have to shower, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. One thing that is a little bit different right now is how you use Tomb. So before with Tomb, you would kind of just pop it just to live for a second, and then you would like, it didn't really matter what you did after that. But now everyone's kind of in a spot where you sometimes will use the Tomb for the refreshing frost brick itself, and you'll like break it instantly, so you get the extra fortify, and that's really good like in point situations. Yeah, and there's another person doing the exploit. But what else is new? So yeah, so Ice Gauntlet is like really, really good in general with Void Gauntlet and stuff as a just kind of deterrent weapon, but it's not good all the time. Usually, if you're like a healer and you're in a spot where you don't have like an enclosed space, I wouldn't say Ice Gauntlet is always best. Like, it might be better to run like a rapier or a hatchet just to escape from people, but not all the time. Okay, so yeah, the other thing I'd say is like if you're running the Pylon tree, the reason why Pylon is really good is it's the fastest way to build ult charge in the game, and it's not comparable. And I think everyone's caught on to this and kind of accepted this at this point. There are some people that didn't really think so at first, but I think everyone's kind of realized it. The main reason why it's so good is in wars you have dummies, so you can drop your Pylon like on the actual dummies themselves, and then you can get tons of ult charge like super fast. And if I have like the dot gem, then those dots will also get me ult charge. So, and the little Pylon burst also gets me ult charge, so it's just like a lot of ways to get like really quick passive ult charge. And if you're using the actual Ice Storm itself, the dot gem doesn't really make any sense. But if you're using a Pylon, then the dot gem makes a lot of sense. In terms of like perks you're looking for on Ice Gauntlet, there's kind of like two ways that people have been building it if you're going for the refreshing style. There's an argument to run Deadly Frost on armor and then put a refreshing on your Ice Gauntlet, which basically means you're running the one from Dynasty that drops, because that's the only one that's like decent that has refreshing. But at that point you could run 9 refreshing, and then you can do like your infinite combo a little bit easier, and you don't really lose anything in terms of Deadly Frost. You lose like maybe 2%, and you gain like 2.8% for all your abilities, so there's an argument for that. The other way is usually put Deadly Frost on Ice Gauntlet. There's like a few rules where Deadly Frost on Ice Gauntlet doesn't make a ton of sense. It's basically if you're off a point, then Ice Storm makes a little bit more sense because you can use that to mess with people's stam, and if you reduce their stam, then you can set up for your other weapon a little bit more, because they have to dodge because you have Unending Thaw at that point if you're running for that sort of spec. But even then, if you run Unending Thaw on armor and you run Deadly Frost, then you can just be better. So yeah. But if you're running the Pylon, you want a dot gem. If you're not running Pylon, you don't want a dot gem. If you're running Pylon, a lot of your abilities will be centered around your Pylon. You can also use Pylon to like refresh your Ice Storm, which is pretty good. But it's really fast ult charge. The Deadly Frost effect doesn't actually get you ult charge as far as I'm aware. So it doesn't actually, like, the damage doesn't count for anything. But the Pylon really makes it so you get your ult charge very fast. And even if you don't have your like Ice going out, you still get decent ult charge from it, but you won't get the ult charge from the gem itself. But you don't want to be on the gem all the time, so yeah. that's the main arguments for Ice Gauntlet. I think it's generally good with almost every build. If you're playing for the Ice Gauntlet, there's also like, I think the most skillful part, and the part that separates people a lot, is like how you use your shower. Like you could use shower behind people, you could use shower to like prevent them to back up, you could put it in front of people to prevent them from pushing forward. One thing I like to do a lot is if I'm getting pressured, I'll do like a U-shaped shower. The purpose of this is people chasing me get caught, and then I get haste out the other side, so I can both get away and stop people from chasing me. Another kind of common one that you see people do is they'll do like a kind of a small directional shower, but you have to have like kind of a high DPI for it. So that's something like this, where it kind of goes everywhere. And then you could also like kind of run around in this. And I use that sometimes to get away from people if they're chasing me, which sounds really stupid, but it works. Because people kind of get caught in the middle and they'll still swing on you, but then you can kind of run around in circles. I wouldn't do it all the time. Usually the U-shaped shower is best, but if you're surrounded, it's not a bad strategy, and then it groups people up in your shower. So mostly a deady point move. But yeah, most of the other movement stuff is like pretty standard, like dodge and a jump is pretty good. If you dodge while you have your ice pylon out, it will shoot again, so that's really effective. And yeah, I think that's for the most part, the important parts about Pylon. You can't really ever go wrong with running an Ice Gauntlet in a war setting or in an OPR setting. It's just like a very solid default weapon. The main thing is like playing for your Refreshing Frost, and Defiant Freeze is also a noteworthy perk that everyone runs at this point, except if you're running Ice Spike. So every time you cast an ability, you gain 4 to 5, so that's useful. Cleansing Tomb is of course important, and Strengthening Tomb is important. The other like kind of weird thing is you have to get this Frigid Showers perk in order for Deadly Frost to actually work. So make sure you go all the way down there, and it's just a good perk to have anyway. But yeah, I think that's basically it for Ice Pylon. There's not really a reason to not run it in almost any circumstance. Like, there are weapons that do a little bit more in terms of util, but the actual like slow effect and the shower itself is like one of the best abilities in wars, just because it forces people to use cooldowns in order to get in. And even with like 1 to 2 Ice Gauntlets, you can just permanently lock a gate down, which just makes it a must-have weapon in wars in general. So yeah, I think that's all I really have for it. Oh, actually, perks. So I talked about the Deadly Frost versus the Refreshing. If you are going the Deadly Frost route, there aren't really any good secondary Ice Gauntlet perks. Like, I actually think the best Ice Gauntlet for War on Attack right now is Deadly Frost Ruinous, and I don't think you can get Enchanted, so it's like probably Chain. Or maybe Attunement, I guess, if you like really were trying to find this. But you're not really ever using your Ice Gauntlet for damage unless you're shooting Siege. So Ice Gauntlet's actually super effective versus Siege, and it's like the only weapon that I know of that really is. So that makes Ice Gauntlet really, really good for breaking stuff, and you don't normally use it for the auto attacks, which makes it a really good candidate for Ruinous, which is very weird because it's normally a trash perk, but it's not on that weapon, and also Enchanted's very, very good with it. Shirking used to work very well, but Shirking now only works on the first tick of Ice Storm, so it's not really worth running as much anymore, versus it used to like empower the entire duration of Ice Storm. So that's like the main part about Ice Gauntlet, I think, and I'll just try to end it there and try to keep it a little bit shorter. But yeah, you either go Pylon tree generally, or you go the other tree that would be something like this. This is generally, I'd say if you're running more int, then this tree is better. If you're running less int, then the other tree is better. Like, if you're 250 int plus, it's good. But the 250 int perk really doesn't matter. Like, this doesn't actually affect Ice Storm at all. It just like makes it so that your Ice Storm actually does significant damage, to where it makes sense to run that like the what do you call it? To run like Storm. But usually I'd say Pylon is better, but if you're like in a IGVG normal group, then I'd probably run Storm. If you're on point, Pylon tends to be better. And a Pylon's not good for just like dropping it on 4, it's mostly good for the dummies off the start of the war too, because then you get ult charge first almost every single time. So yeah, that's all I got, and I'll see you guys in the next one.